Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner for the SCEA Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves CEWL. And if you want to learn more about our center, you can go right here to this website, CEWL.us. That's CEWL.us. We are proudly funded by a GPS grant from the National Education Association and work under their affiliate here in the state of South Carolina, the South Carolina Education Association. It's been a little bit. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had a live stream. We've got a couple of great ones lined up this week. I'm really excited about tonight. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was working at the Center for Educator Recruitment, Retention, and Advancement, or CERA, and they are well known for their Teacher Cadet program, which was a program started right here in South Carolina. In fact, my Spanish teacher and a guidance counselor at Conway High School started the program back in the mid-'80s, and it was piloted in just a few sites across South Carolina, and then it spread all across the nation. The last time I checked, there were around 39, 40 states who have Teacher Cadet programs, and so it's a really proud South Carolina product and something we should take great pride in for starting, because it is a teacher recruitment program that gives students dual credit, AP weighted credit, and college credit. It's like a teacher, it's like an Education 101 course, and high school juniors and seniors can take this course and do across the state of South Carolina. So I was working with Sarah and heard about some exciting things happening down at Ashley Ridge High School with Victoria Merritt's Teacher Cadet program. She had some success in recruiting male minority teaching candidates into the Teacher Cadet program. So we went down there, shot some videos, did some interviews with those young men, and a lot of them wound up in the teaching profession. And one of them is our guest tonight, and that guest is none other than Jaheim President, who has achieved numerous milestones throughout his academic and professional journey. In March of 2019, he was featured on the Ellen DeGeneres Show, where he was awarded a full scholarship to the College of Charleston. He graduated from Ashley Ridge in May of 2019. During his time at the College of Charleston, he was part of the Call Me Mr. program, another great program that is an initiative designed to prepare minority men for teaching roles in classrooms. In spring of 2022, he became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in middle grade education. And he's currently employed on the other side of the state in Greenville County School District, where he teaches history at Berea Middle School. Beyond his professional achievements, Jaheim is the founder of Victory in Progress Youth Fellowship, an organization dedicated to the empowerment and development of young people. He's also the host of the Legacy Builder podcast, a platform focused on empowerment, growth, and creating a lasting legacy. He lives by the motto, everyone has a chance to create a lasting legacy, which has been the driving force behind his endeavors. So please welcome Mr. Jaheim President. How are you tonight, Jaheim?
I am doing excellent. I'm glad to be here tonight. I really am.
It's good to see you again. It seems like our paths cross every year or two, it seems like. And I'm just really proud of what you've done and for taking on this role as an educator. It's so important that our young men see other young men in the profession, and also people of color is very, very important. You and I have had that conversation before about the importance of representation. But before we get started, is there anything I missed in your bio that you wanted to tell our listeners tonight?
Oh no, you covered everything. Especially the Legacy Builders podcast. Just a shameless plug. Go check that out.
Let's start with this. Let's start with growing up. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? How did that inform your pathway into the teaching field?
Well, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. Grew up. I started my earlier part of my elementary life in North Charleston. I was raised by my grandparents and my mom, and then my stepdad came later in my life, who's kind of really like my father figure in my life. And then I transitioned to where I believe where the Lord blessed me. Third grade, I started going to DD2 schools, and then that's where I met I would say my person who inspired me to become a teacher, Christina Dykema. And then from there, I just connected and then end up going to Gregg Middle School, and then eventually going to Ashley Ridge High School, and then staying home and going to College of Charleston. So that's really how I progressed it. But I'm Charleston born and raised, and you can kind of hear it sometimes in my voice and the geechiness in my voice.
So, talk a little bit about that experience at Ashley Ridge with Victoria Merritt in the teacher cadet program. How did she recruit you into that program?
So so Ashley Ridge, it was actually my US history teacher who, she was telling I heard about the program. I really didn't know about teacher cadet, but I heard about it. I was like, oh, okay. Of course I want to get it. But it was my US history teacher who was like, Jaheim, you definitely need to join this program. And then so the end of my junior year, that's when we applied. And then I was like, I sent it to Ms. Merritt. I sent her, handed it, and I was like, I definitely want to be in this program. She was like, yes, I've heard a lot about you, and you're definitely going to be in this program. So that's how I kind of got involved in it. I was just my U.S. history, because I was always taught in her class. I love social studies. I am a social studies teacher. And I would
Right.
just talk in her class, and I would just be like, man, I'm going to get your podium. Like, I would just talk certain things about teaching, and I want to teach this. I'm going to do this when I'm teaching. I'm gonna do this. And she was like, Jaheim, you definitely you need to be into teacher cadet. And she was telling me, like, you get to go student teaching, you get dual credit, it looks good on your college application. So she was kind of like really the driving force into making sure that I get to teacher cadet.
Right. So tell me about when you're going through teacher cadet, you were always going to be like a history teacher, like social studies was always your thing. Was there any did you ever have any doubts about it, and if so, what were they?
So I really I started, okay, so like each year I would be like, oh, I'm gonna teach elementary. I was like, oh no. And then I was like, high school, no. So the real doubt was, could I really be myself in education?
Right.
The laughter, the sarcastic, with everything that entails Jaheim. And so with teacher cadet and just Miss Merritt, we went by, the program and how good, but she would just tell her stories, and how she was able to encourage us, but also her life story. So having that connections with her was kind of like, it kind of soothed all my doubts of like, okay, I can still be Jaheim. I don't have to be the teacher every day that wears button downs every day. I don't have to be the teacher that is
Right.
yelling, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't have to be that teacher that's super laid back, but I can just find a mixture of all of those things and still be me. And I think that was more important, because I never want to be in a job where I lost me, or I had to I never want to be those teachers that when the principal came in, you can kind of like see them like,
Change.
yeah, change. And
Yeah.
like I would always clown teachers for that. I'd be like, you don't do that when she's not in. So I never wanted to be that teacher where I had to change my personality when certain people came in the room. Like I'm always gonna be me. And I think that was kind of like Miss Merritt kind of taught us that we could still be ourselves and still follow the guidelines of the educational system. So that's kind of the main thing, because like she would joke with us, but then she'll be serious with us. And and then especially doing the Ellen,
Yeah.
journey, like we got to know a lot more about her. And I think that was a great thing.
Let's talk a little bit about that, and I don't want to come back to what you just said, but you just brought up the Ellen thing, and I do have a picture of that day, so I'm gonna put that up here. This is you and Darius Smith
Yes.
on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and finding out that you had received a acceptance into College of Charleston, right? And then
Yes. Yeah.
you like $20,000. Talk about what that day was like for you. Like, talk about your experience there.
So I mean, I was really, people don't realize from I would say from January to that very moment. So everybody gets that college acceptance letter, but I didn't get mine in January. I really got a maybe. I really, for the College of Charleston, people don't really know that I got a maybe. And so my birthday's in February. I spent February, there's a minority men institute that the College of Charleston has, and I spent my birthday literally there trying to just kind of up my antes of like I really want to go to this college because we at that point we already met Dr. James. He was already kind of recruiting us, selling us on the Call Me Mr. Dream of what we could really do during that setting. So it was when people realized it was like, was that stage? No, I was just more important thing, I was just happy to get into college. People don't realize that, going to college was a very, that was instilled for me from,
Yeah.
time I got in school. My mom always said, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college. And now I was able to not go to college just to be a student athlete. I could just be a student.
Right.
I was a real good football player, but I didn't want to take that path because I wanted to really indulge in who Jaheim was without the, this and that. And so that very moment just was kind of, I really kind of gained a lot of weight, but I really was able to relax because the real stress was off of me. Like I was in somebody's college, I was going to college, and I was
Right.
actually going to college for what I wanted to do. And then the $20,000 and being paid for was just an extra bonus. But I was just excited to extend that dream that my mom had for me, but also that I had for myself.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was that you didn't want to have to sacrifice the real Jaheim to be a teacher. And I really think this is I didn't expect to go in this direction, but this is something I feel like is really a really important thing, not just for teachers, but for people in general, is the sense of having to sacrifice authenticity to make it or to get where you want to go. And in the sacrifice of that authenticity, as Thoreau said, we lead lives of quiet desperation because we're constantly in this sort of conflict of having to lead a life as a version of ourselves that isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our students often have to do that too, to fit in, or they say, I think it was Brene Brown said the opposite of I don't know if it was like loneliness. It was fitting in. Like it's actually, or wait, I don't know. Anyway, the opposite of something was fitting in. And so she was saying that fitting in was actually this we think of it as a positive thing, like, hey, I fit in. Having to warp yourself to fit in. Talk about the importance of authenticity, the importance of being fully Jaheim in your role as a teacher, not only like being convinced that you could do that, but like now, after you've had now a year and a couple of months of being in the classroom, what has that authenticity meant to your craft, to your teaching profession?
I think it means everything. I mean, especially the context of history I teach. I teach ancient history into World War II. So I think if I wasn't me, that class would be a whole different concept because kids sometimes, they're not going to remember who Julius Caesar is. They're not going to remember certain things, but if they can remember a different concept, or if they can remember the overlying theme of the class. So there's Fridays where I'm literally jamming old 90s music and jamming, dancing while they're doing student work. And I feel like my students remember those moments, and then that also keeps student engagement involved. And then I don't really have a lot of behavioral problems. I in my class, I really don't. And I think it's because I can be real. Like I can be real enough to say, when a student is rolling their eyes or whatever, I say, you don't do that to your mom, because I know I don't do that to my mom. And so they that had that connection. They're like, yeah, you're right. You know what I mean? Or just talking to them as a person. My thing is, growing up, I didn't respond well to yelling. I never did. And
Right.
and I was I'll get in trouble for it. I would start laughing when you would yell. Like my granddad would always get mad when serious moment I'm start laughing. And so just having that ability to where I don't have to yell, but I can connect to them, and find little ways, to kind of bring them into my life and bring, myself in their life. So, talking about my football highlights or just being me, I think I've been able to teach without the pressure. I think in
Yeah.
education now we have so much pressure. And for me, is not really pressure because I really do love teaching. Like I wanted to be a teacher
Right.
since I was young. So I think taking that pressure out of it, taking that, living and dying by the test scores or living and dying by this and that. I don't live by that model. I'm really, and I said,
Yeah.
you said it in my bio, I'm trying to create a lasting impact, just like someone created a lasting impact on me. So it's not really about the, X's and O's. It's really about the Jimmys and Joes. Like I really want to build you as a person to where you may know nothing about history when you leave my class, but at the end of the day, you may learn how to be yourself and also how to be a better person. Because I
Yeah.
I mean, you're not saying you're always not all of our students are going to go to college. We want them to go to college, but I want to know that, if I meet you later on in life, you're being a productive citizen in society
Right.
and being able to say, Mr. President, I know, they may talk later. So I remember nothing you said in class, but I remember you saw me as a person and you were able, and I had that a lot with my students last year, and especially this year, where they were able to see me as a person. So they were able to, I could get certain things out of them that, some of my colleagues couldn't because, I took the pressure out of education and we were there to learn, but it didn't have to always be my way. It
Right.
didn't have I tried to find what, and especially this year, try to find what makes you what clicks for you. So it may be some days where, I let you listen to music and you do your work. It may be certain days where I'm lecturing, maybe certain days where we're diving into, how we're relating to the latest tea that's going on and how can I relate that to, oh, well, those type of concepts happen in history. Oh, really? So stuff like that. I think being able to be me and smiling, you would be surprised how many educators don't smile
Right.
or how many educators don't laugh or just have fun because they're so uptight, or scared of that, the pin drop. Me, I'm just not that way because I know that I create a lot of positive energy in the world. I create a lot of
Um,
good spaces that people, there may be some people that have negative vibes on me, but there are more positives out there about me than negatives. So I rely on that. I can, that it'll happen. It don't always have to happen in your way, which in education that's hard to do, but I just don't want to conform to what's not me because when it becomes what is not me, then I believe the students suffer more than I suffer.
Yeah, I think what happens is a lot of teachers get too focused on connecting the students to the standards and not connecting with the students, and they put that first. And
Mhm.
it's like so when I think when you come into the classroom, like I'm just a goofy, nerdy kind of guy who likes Star Wars and just stuff like I'm
Mhm.
a nerdy, goofy guy, and I didn't have to put that on a shelf when I walked into the classroom. I just was that's who I was. And I think when kids see you sort of like taking that mask off, and it's refreshing for them to see an adult who's being authentic, because and then they can kind of take their guard down and they don't have to be tough guy, class clown, whatever. They can just be authentically who they are and feel safe
Mhm.
when they're in your classroom. And I think that helps to build rapport. And then vicariously, then you can, sneak in the standards and, bring them into learning and get them excited about learning because they know they can trust you. If you're lying to them about yourself, then
Mm.
I think it's really difficult for them to trust you on anything else, especially the things that they don't really naturally want to do. Like they
Mhm.
want to learn, about you know the Battle of 1812. They're not naturally curious about that. How do you get them to that? It's like through connection, and this sounds like to me that's exactly what you're doing. So I really applaud that, and I hope it's like that should be a PD right there, like how to tap back into your authentic self. I think
Mhm.
a lot of us human beings, Gabor Mate talks about how when we have the choice between authenticity and attachment with an attachment figure with our parents or our community, we choose the attachment, the safety of attachment, and sacrifice the authenticity. It sounds to me like you had the kind of environment growing up where that was never required of you to sacrifice who you truly are. And I'm glad to hear that. Um, Talk about your experience at College of Charleston and specifically the impact that the Call Me Mr. program had on you.
I it was, growing up, a lot of times people would be like, "You want to be a teacher? Oh, no, you want to be a coach." Especially when I start, no, you want to be a coach teacher. No offense.
Right, right.
You wanted to be, and in college at Charleston, I actually did coach a little bit, but then I was like, no, I want to be a teacher. And so seeing, Call Me Mister, and the Call Me Mister has expanded now to where they allow females into the program, and it was just being in that same room, especially when we went to the Summer Institute, and just seeing a room, class auditorium filled with you know majority black young men who wanted to be teachers, who are going into the same field that you in. Actually, the school that I teach at, funny enough, my mentor, who was a Mr. Kevin Jordan, he actually teaches, at the school. And when I was looking up schools, and I was going through websites and applying, I saw his name, and just instantly I felt a draw to that school, because like, okay, I won't be the only one, and especially um as minority men, it is hard to live on that island, because sometimes it's just so hard, because you could see stuff in a different lens, because I've lived that experience from, a minority male
Right.
student. I've lived that experience, so I could take it, as a different approach. And so I think that's kind of honestly been the reason why the Call Me Mr. program is so powerful, because even if we don't teach at the same school, if we're in the same district, if we see each other in district events, or we just go back or see each other on Facebook, see what they're doing, it kind of excites me to go further on in my career. I'm in my master's program to get my administration degree, because I see fellow misters who have paved the way, and who are principals or working in district leaderships, and that tells me that I can do it because I see them. And then that also tells me that I have a resource to lean on when I'm navigating that journey. And I think that's all. Everybody wants to find their community. And I think at the College of Charleston, I found my community. And also our my advisor at the time, he was a elementary teacher. He taught challenge, he taught GT. He went to the College of Charleston, and now through his journey, he's now working at the University of South Carolina. So that also tells me that, that I don't have to be confined to public education. I can go to higher ed. I can
Right.
go to district office. So I think Common Mister is such a powerful thing, because everybody wants a community, and I think that was my community. And even now, I'll text them. I just get some of that funniness, or I'll go. Mr. Jordan, he teaches 8th grade. I just go and collect. Reflect on my day and just talk about what's going on, and he gets me. And there's no wall. It's like, okay, yeah. Oh, did you see that? Because I saw that too. You know what I mean? Like, it just is an unknown, language. Like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? And I think that is such powerful, especially for male educators, especially for minority male educators, because you're seen as, I'm getting pulled from different angles. I have school kids. I have, I'm being pulled for, sometimes, they can't do this in my class. Prayers, go talk to them. So you getting pulled, and sometimes it becomes exhausting, or sometimes it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, right. You know what I mean? So having that other person to kind of
Yeah.
understand, and to kind of feedback into you when you're depleted, is really a great thing.
Yeah. And there's been an effort to improve recruitment of male and minority
Mhm.
teachers. Um, what do you think is the biggest obstacle in that recruitment? What do you think, or some of them? Maybe it's more than one thing. When you thought about it, and you see other minority males, um, going into other professions and not choosing teaching, what are those obstacles that maybe leaders need to be thinking about to help improve this? Because you're grossly underrepresented. I think I don't have the stats on my it's off the top of my head, but I mean the percentage of students of color versus the amount of teachers of color. I mean, it's not even close, and especially when it comes to males. So let's talk about first, what is the obstacle, and then why is it important, not only for students of color, but for all students to see males and people of color in teaching roles.
I think one of the biggest obstacle is that danger of you have to conform, like we talked about, is really that danger of I can't be me because I have to conform to what they want me to be, and I think a lot of minority men are just not, they're not going to put up with it. They are not, and not for long, and you would, and the stats are even discouraging, where minority men go into education and they don't last for what, a year or 3 years, is because nobody wants to conform. Nobody wants that pressure of, why do I have to always deal with the minority men who have who are students who are discipline problems? Why
Mm.
do I have to kind of be the same? Why do I have to be kind of the community,
Yeah.
resident black,
The
minority person of,
yeah, the
you know what I
ambassador.
mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so because a lot of people, some people get intimidated, but some people are afraid to lean into culture, and so you get, and I've hit my moments where, I've hit my spots where it's like, man, come on, you know what I mean, like, and then you see things differently. It's because you've been that student, and then now you're the adult, and then now you're like, "Mm, whoa, that's not right." And so now, as an adult, you can say something. As a student, you could be like, yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
now as an adult, and so I would say, we're just not going to put, or anybody, but we're not just going to put up with the rigmarole for a long
Right.
time. And so I
Right.
think, just when you're in leadership, you have to embrace that person,
Right.
and you have to embrace what they bring to the table, and you have to be willing to accept their strong, and then also accept their weakness, but not condemn them for their weakness, and not, put them in a box, but let them explore, other avenues and other things, and so I think if you're in leadership, I would say recruit, some of the columnists those minority men who may not be in columnists, but you have to really, when you're interviewing, you're interviewing the potential, but also, what could they add to the team? Not to, and I'm gonna say, it's not to check off the quota, but also to, what are we missing in that standpoint? What are we missing in, if all of our students, if all of our minority men and minority women are always in the principal office per se, or ISS or whatever, how can we better suit that community, and what can I learn from that person to help me better that community? Not, they're not the savior, but okay, I didn't grow, I didn't, some of our leadership, they didn't grow up, in certain environments. So instead of using that minority man as, okay, well, go talk to so and so. Okay, so why do so and so act like that? Tell me the why. Why? What could I do? You know what I mean? I think a lot of leaderships don't want to, and I know they, I'm in my master's, so I know they have a lot of stuff on their plate, but those leaderships who really dive into that, and who really look at that and say, okay, they're not here to check off my quota, but they're here to bring some value to my school, and what can I learn from them, and also what can I deposit into their
Yeah.
life and not stifle their growth. And I would believe, and as a student, all students, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, they need, and I say this, my granny, every time I'm like complaining, said, they need to see that successful black male, because culture, if we look around culture, they were they stereotypical, they put us in a, different limelight where most successful black men are, you know, athletes or rappers or whatever. But you can be successful in education and highlighting those success not only on, Black History Month, and I think last year was just a prime example of like those, because I had, make sure I have, I work at school in a highly male population, highly pupils in poverty,
Mhm.
mixture, and I was able to connect with every race or every ethnicity that was in my class, and I was able to connect to them, and I was able to learn from those cultures though I didn't know, and I was able to deposit, like my culture, my Charleston, my geekiness. I sometimes it'll slip in class. I'm like, it was like, Mr. President, we just have, like, man, I'm Geechee. It's gonna happen, And so they were able to ask me questions, but I believe that having a black male and not leaving them on that island
Yeah.
and not, you know, letting them be vulnerable, letting them have a space to where, hey, I messed up. How do I? But I think many times we leave, the males and some of the females uh on that island, and instead of really embracing them, and embracing their culture, because not, and I'm gonna say this, not every black person is the same, and not every black person
Right.
has the same story, and
Right.
so you can't say, oh, I interview, oh, good, so just embracing their story and not leaving them on the island and building really. When I interviewed, I told all my schools, like, I'm not from Greenville, so my school family is gonna be my family for a while. So embracing and not leaving me on that island and pretty much building a community.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. This idea of conforming comes in a lot of different ways, and
Mhm.
um, for a lot of different people. So one example might be code switching. You
Mhm.
know, people are feeling like they have to change the way they talk, or maybe they feel like they change the way they have to dress,
Mm.
not talk about certain things that they're into culturally, whatever. Um, and I think that goes back to the point of not wanting to sacrifice authenticity. And I'm just gonna lay it out here. There is still this sort of white dominant culture that persists in a lot of school districts. And
Yes.
there's this sort of these standards and rules and dress codes and certain things that are all come out of a white supremacy
Mhm.
culture, and those things are still, unfortunately, still there. And so I can see why, if you feel like that's not a culture that you really connect with or resonate with, that you might sometimes feel like you're on an island, especially if you're the only teacher of color, especially the only male of color in a particular school or district. And I see this in particularly in an elementary setting, why a lot of males may not want to go into an elementary setting, because it's generally dominated by females. And this happens, not just it's not just a black white thing. It could be Hispanic teacher, it could be a
Mhm.
teacher from another country, it could be a teacher from another region of the country coming here. So there's so many different ways to feel ostracized and isolated. um, and I appreciate you naming that and bringing that up. How did Berea seal the deal with you? Like, how did they get you to go all the way from Charleston across the state?
Well, I was coming to Greenville County regardless.
Okay.
I was coming to Greenville County because I wanted every. I mean, I can go to Charleston and pretty much nine times out of 10 they're gonna know me or they recognize my last name, and I just realized in life I didn't want that. You know what I mean? I didn't want to write. I didn't want to like kind of sell myself like that. So I went, and how they sealed the deal was, and I call her my school mom, Miss Johnson, Maria Johnson, and also Kevin Jordan. And then at the time, they had a African American male principal, Mr. Cameron Pratt. And so, seeing those things, knowing my future, knowing that I wanted to be an admin, and then Miss Maria Johnson, who I go see pretty much every day. she just talked about family, and I knew how strong I am with my family and that balance, and I
Yeah.
knew that's what I wanted. And I knew I could bounce off Kevin Jordan. I can if I don't feel the family, I know I still had pockets of it, and so that's what kind of sealed the deal. And I'm thankful for really for my time at Berea, because I'm creating different families. Like, I had one of our counselors, she made a plate the other day, uh and she brought me it for lunch, and she breaks cakes, just different stuff, and they've been embracing me as a son,
Yeah.
and I really do enjoy that, because family is everything for me. And so having that, being away from my family was really kind of difficult because I went to college in Charleston, and I lived in
Right.
Charleston. So
Right.
this is I tell people all the time, these are my college years, because I'm away from home. And so
Right.
that just, being that family, and knowing that I was in a community where I could see and serve kids who were coming from different backgrounds, and being able to once again fulfill my life, my life passion, of my life goal is to leave a lasting impact. And I believe, even in my short time, 1.5 years, I've been able to create connections that I know that will follow me to my grave. And so I think just being able to see that, and like I said, it's not about would I say I'm the best history teacher? Probably not in certain people's standards, but am I a good person in education? I would believe yes. And just having that self prophecy, and just telling myself that each day, like, Jaheim, you're going to impact somebody, even on the days where I don't want to go, the days I don't feel the best. I'll have a student, or I'll have a teacher
Yeah.
pour life into me. And I think that's what kind of sold me the deal on Berea, in this stage of my career, is having someone being able to pour life into me while I pour life into other people.
Yeah. And when I look back at 15 years in the classroom, that's what stands out for me. It was never like a moment of, hey, this kid got this. I went from an 80 to a 90 on a test. Like, it was always the connection, like, and then lasting connect, knowing that I made an impact, and those students still will reach out to me and say, hey, Mr. Scholl, how's it going? What are or asking me for advice on stuff,
Mhm.
knowing that I had enough of an impact that they still, after they're no longer required to come to my class, they still would want to interact and seek my guidance and that kind of thing. It's a really special. I think that's one of the most special things about the profession, is connecting with the young person. And like you said, yes, we know that what we're teaching is important, but it's like, how can I guide this person to make really good choices, and to see that they have so much potential in themselves, and that they can create, and they can be successful, and that they can be, like you said, a good citizen, a good person, a good family person,
Yes.
and then comfortable with themselves. Like,
Mhm.
that, because that's where it all stems from. If I could get kids to be silly and goofy and like comfortable being themselves, psychologically, that's so healing. That's one of the ways we heal from trauma, is reconnecting to our authentic selves. And then that fuels the relationship, successful relationships, whether it's like you finding a partner, or you finding or having children, or finding a job that makes sense to you, and working with, having coworkers. It's like, if you bring your authentic self into all of those things are way more likely to be successful. You will generally be a happier person, and thrive. I want to talk about uh, just the title of today's the session, which is your reflections on your first year. We do a lot of work. Dr. Marcella Wein-Snyder and Angie Brush and Stephanie Johnson do a lot of work with our Cool Induction Institute. And when you look back on your first year, what were some of your biggest challenges, and what would be some of your top tips for young people in their first year of teaching?
I would say finding balance. Depends on the school you work at. It was just coming. And what I did, actually, I taught at a summer program that we offer at our school called Bell Excel. So I was there actually at my school July. And Bell Excel is, funded through United Way. And so I was there June and July. So, and then I was able to start, but it was so fast paced, especially the school I'm at was like da 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 da. And so here it is. I found myself that first, literally that first half of the year, that first semester, I was just so drowned it because I had this fantasy of teaching and it wasn't what I was kind of mad because it wasn't the
Right, right.
fantasy, so I had to come down. It took me a while to come down to reality, but then it also was just I wasn't prioritizing my mental health.
Yeah.
I was, I was in a difficult and bad headspace. And it wasn't until literally going on July, no, not July, December, last day of December. And I just like this calendar year, 2024 is not gonna be like 2023. And when I started to make that mindset, I started to put me first, knowing that if I put me first, then that will resonate with my students. So I started going back to the gym. I started to really, not worry about the pressures of what the school was demanding, but worry about the kids and how can I impact the kids. So going back to my why and finding my why. And since I did that, it was an easy breeze. Like I wouldn't get into, the school drama. I wouldn't get into none of that stuff because that
Right.
didn't feed me anymore. Like that just didn't, I wasn't trying to be the perfect teacher anymore. I wasn't trying to
Right.
do none of that. I was just like, what's meant for me is gonna always open up for me. And I know that if I be a good person, if I, if I give it a try and if I do what what I've been called to do, what I know I can do, then it'll work out fine. And when I started doing that, I started looking at different situations better. I started to know, and then I started to know that the dreams that I have for myself in my career are still going to come to pass, and that everything I want to accomplish is still going to happen. And so once I started doing that, I would tell any teacher, just remember your why and don't live in that it's the end of the world type of thing. Because and especially in the day of education we live in, that'll suck you in, and then you'll be like, I'm a bad teacher, when no, you're a good teacher, and you may need to add more stuff to your toolbox, but you're a good teacher. And you have to keep telling yourself that even when other people are with other stuff, all that other stuff, you just have to keep telling yourself, you have to have that internal talk with yourself, even if you're in a different places, whatever. You have to learn that progress. You have to learn that it's about what's going to happen later down in life. And if you can continue to and find a person in the building, and it may not be that person, may not be on your team, or that person
Mm.
may not be the person next door. Sometimes the person is IC. Sometimes the person could be another teacher. Sometimes the person is a custodian
Yeah.
or a groundskeeper, and I have great relationship with those that work at our school, and simple, just and sometimes you got to get away from education. Sometimes you got to realize that you're still a person and that you have a life outside of education. Now, one of my the teachers that on my team, he, at first I would laugh. He was like, I don't do stuff past contract hours, and every time he would say that, I'd be like, because he's from California and he just has his own way of thinking out. But now, and especially in year 2, I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I have more, like when I walk through this door, I don't check emails, and my friend
Right.
may be watching. I don't do that because I have a life. I have dreams outside of education. Education and being a teacher is not my end all be all. And I think a lot of teachers, they're like stressing, oh, no, no, no. There is no perfect lesson. Okay.
Right.
There is no perfect. There are gonna be days where it just flops, and you just gotta redirect. I had a flop today. I was like, okay, well, you can come tomorrow. And so I think, teachers, we just got to get into that mindset of you are you. You are not, the label, in this digital world, you're not the label, on classroom door, or what you portray on TikTok or whatever like that. You are you. And when you start bringing you to the table and realize what you can handle, then it becomes easy, because then you realize, okay, whatever your time is, I get my students, like, from when I walk in that, you're me. When I leave, that. But when I leave, I personally, I don't answer the group chats, I don't answer the emails, I
Yeah.
don't do none of that stuff, unless it's urgent. But I have a life. I'm Jaheim, and I'm
Right.
going to progress with Jaheim. I'm going to work on my podcast. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to handle teacher stuff when I have time, and when time is permitted. But that's not my end all be all. And I think people sometimes, get married. You get married to the job, and then when you don't succeed the way you want to succeed, then it trickles down, and your family is affected. Whoever is affected, and I don't have time for that, because I'm
Yeah.
trying to live long. So, and they
I'm
say,
I'm glad you learned that early on, because a lot of teachers don't figure that out till it's way late in their career. And I just would encourage every teacher to really listen to what Jaheim's saying, because if you don't prioritize your mental and physical health, your mental and physical health they're going to show up at some point and get your attention, one way or another, and also your social lives. I mean, we like you said, we are human beings. There's this old union saying, it's like 8 hours for work, 8 hours of sleep, and 8 hours for leisure, for your own free time. And it's like, yeah, when I'm there and it's my 8 hours, I want to be dialed in. I want to do good work. I want to make connection with students. I want to make an impact. And then when that day is done, then it's my time to, like you said, take care of, like, if I need to go to therapy, go to therapy. If I want to meditate, if I want to, like you said, prayer, if I go to church for a spiritual life, if I want to go to the gym or yoga or do whatever physical activities, take the time to actually go to the grocery store, cook a healthy meal for myself instead of just grabbing something on the go. Resting, and that's the other thing, we feel a lot of times feel guilty for taking naps or resting, and just making sure you're getting quality sleep, and like you said, investing into the relationships that you have with your family, whether it's a spouse, children, brother, sister, mom, dad, friends, taking trips, reading books that aren't related to teaching, watching movies. These things kind of come together to actually fuel a long lasting career. And when teachers don't do that, one of two things typically happen: either they get so overwhelmed that they quit,
Mhm.
or they stay in the profession, and they're burned out, and then that comes out in certain ways, in the way they interrelate to their colleagues and their students.
Mhm.
And so, I'm really happy to hear that you've recognized the need for self-care, for prioritizing yourself, and is really establishing boundaries. Self-care, the first thing I tell people is, the first thing with self-care is saying no, and setting those boundaries for when you're going to be working and when you're not. And so the
Mhm.
idea that you're not answering emails, you're not answering group texts, you're not, researching things, you're not lesson planning. I know there's some teachers out there saying, well, I wish it was like that for me. And it's like, one of the reasons why we exist at the SCEA is to help you organize and help you, um, help folks in our profession get together. And
Mhm.
there is a situation where teachers just literally can't do that. That's a problem. If they can't finish at a reasonable time and they're working 11-hour days every day, this is not reasonable. We ought to get together and push back against that, because we are human beings who have a right to a life outside of the profession.
Mhm.
The last question I have is kind of unrelated, but we've been talking a little bit about the Praxis Core test, the one that a lot of young teachers have to take to get accepted fully into their teacher education program here in
Mhm.
South Carolina. What are your thoughts on that? On a bubble-in test dictating whether you get into a teacher ed program or not?
Um, that was my Achilles heel for a long time. And then the core, I would say the core especially is like, it's just its own little animal, and it's like, ugh. But I once again, those connections that I made, it was actually my algebra 3 teacher who um who helped me pass math core. Like she was traveling, she retired, she was traveling in the US in the R&B. And she
Mm.
literally would call me and we would work. She bought the book and she helped me pass core because I was so defeated. And it kind of brings unnecessary stress because especially because you really can't graduate. If you want to continue.
If you don't mind me asking, were you struggling with the math part? Is that
Yes,
what you did?
yes, the
So
math part.
here's the thing I would ask. I would say, just for anybody watching this who cares or who is a policymaker, here's a young man who's obviously brilliant, obviously able to teach, and he's teaching middle school history, and you want to prevent him from getting into the profession because he has a challenge with algebra.
Mhm.
It makes no sense. It makes no. I don't use I never used algebra my entire teaching career, and you're forcing students to learn something that for a lot of people, including myself, I struggled with. Algebra was the only thing that I really struggled with academically. It just didn't click with me. It didn't make sense, and I think that happens with a lot of young people. And a lot of people want to enter the profession. They're paying a lot of money to take the test, then they don't pass it, then they got to repay it. You do it, and then after a while, you're like, dude, it's not like I'm going into $1 million career here. Like
Mhm.
I'm actually doing service, and I'm not going to be paid like I'm not going to be wealthy from it. So why are you putting this obstacle in my way that isn't even relevant to the job that I'm going to do?
Right, right, right. And that's why I said the core is for me. I feel like the core is very unnecessary. I get your content because you're going to teach that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the core itself, it was just like so, and then the fact that you can't be fully admitted into your teaching, your teaching,
Right.
it was crazy to me. And so I spent, time pondering on the what, I knew I was gonna pass, but the pondering on the what is.
Right.
What
Right.
now I have to do this and I know a lot of people who aren't blessed enough to pass the core. And so they had to do alternative teaching. So now they got to go through these programs where they did 4 years of how to become a teacher. Then now they got to do another 4 years,
Mm.
another 3 years or what it may be to learn how to teach when I already did that. And now, just to, loophole, I don't think that's right because then now they're teaching, with a fully licensed, and so now they have to do certain stuff, certain stuff again, and I feel for them, and so I think that the core, especially if they're, I think a lot of a lot of schools, and I was blessed that the common Mr. Dr. James, he actually found funding for us so that our practice core, our practice, any practice we're taking could be funded, but not everybody was blessed with that. And so you once again, you're taking, those tests aren't cheap,
Yeah.
especially the core.
And there's no credible research that the score on your praxis core maps onto quality teaching or improved student outcomes. So there's no purpose for it. There's no purpose for it other than to serve as this unnecessary obstacle. And people think, well, you're lowering the bar. It's not really lowering the bar. It's just removing an obstacle that doesn't actually improve teacher quality. So
Right.
remove that obstacle for all these young people who really want to be teachers.
Mhm.
And maybe you're teaching third grade reading and you like or middle school history and it doesn't, but you're stumbling on this math portion of the core, and it just makes no sense for us to have these unnecessary barriers, especially in an environment where there are empty classrooms where they're hiring long-term subs or people who are underqualified to fill those vacancies, or having to go to other countries
Yeah.
to fill those vacancies because we can't find enough people here in the United States.
Mhm.
So I'm glad we had that conversation, but we are running out of time. I want to honor the time. Is there anything we have not talked about that you want to mention? You go ahead and plug your podcast again and anything else you have going on. I know you've got a lot of creative endeavors. So
I would just say definitely listen to Legacy Builders podcast. And and really, plug into that. But I would say just one thing, um, knowing, I would say knowing when when you're being tolerated, not celebrated, and being able to, and this is one thing I'm learning, being able to know that the connections you make, if they're true connections, will last. Don't feel stuck in an environment where where your
Yeah.
mental health is being displaced or whatever like that. And so sometimes it's okay. You may have to move schools, you may have to move grade levels, you may have to do this, you may have to do that, but don't feel like you're a bad person. And also just know that it's okay to take a break. It's honestly really okay to take a break from education if you need it. I read that I would rather have you fueled than unfueled, and like you said, taking it out on students, on coworkers who
Right.
don't even know what you're really going through. So that would just be my lasting thoughts. Just stay in contact with who you are, stay in contact with your why, and know when your season may be up at a place or a season may be up at whatever, and be comfortable to know that you've done your best, and it's okay to maybe transition to something new that may be better for you in the next season of your life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time tonight, Jaheim. I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing and choosing the career path you did.
Mhm.
Zero doubts that you are going to make a lasting impact and create a legacy over the course of many years of your career, no matter where it takes you, whether it's continuing in the classroom or being an administrator or the district office or wherever you go. I know that you're going to continue to make a positive impact everywhere you go. And Berea and Greenville County are lucky to have you now. I know they're probably saying, we hope we can hold on to him as long as possible. But just thank you for making an impact and being that positive light in the world. We need more folks like you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir.
All right. That was Jaheim President, middle school history teacher in his second year of teaching at Berea High School in Greenville County. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Thanks to everybody who posted comments, Marcella and Juanita and Melody and several other people. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to promote just a couple of things we have going on. So if you are an induction teacher watching, what you might want to do is participate in our cool coaching sessions. If you know an early career educator, we offer free online one-to-one support for induction teachers. Basically, you just go to cool.us/coaching. You get put into a breakout room with either Angie Brush, Stephanie Johnson, or Dr. Marcella Weinsnyder. These are three amazing veteran educators who are ready to answer your questions, offer really unfiltered, very supportive, unbiased support to you, whatever you need in terms of questions or just advice on your teaching career. Every Tuesday and Thursday night from 6 to 8 o'clock, they do this. And it's an incredible free service for all public schools teachers in the state of South Carolina. Also want to mention that on Thursday night, if you are, this is a fact, I saw this session over the summer at our Educator Health and Wellness Day. Audrey Calianos is a registered dietitian, and she did the session and it blew my mind. And it's about how our gut health impacts our mental health, particularly anxiety. And so much of what she said really resonated with me. So I asked her if she would come on and talk about it on a live stream. So we're going to do that Thursday night from 7 to 8 o'clock. If you know anybody who deals with anxiety, if you deal with anxiety, this can be a really profound thing to help you, because sometimes when you have anxiety, you feel like, well, you've tried different things and nothing's working. And it could be your nutrition. It could be your gut health. It could be a vitamin deficiency. There's a lot of things that can impact mental health. And it could be something that really, really supports you if you're dealing with anxiety or know someone who is. Coming up on November 6th, Eric